And we are live with some more lounge music. Welcome everyone to our webinar on the sanction screening of documents. We are very happy that you would join us. My name is Petter Bjelland. I'm from Convier. I'm here together.
Hi, my name is pretty good. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm here with Friedrich from OpenSanctions. Yeah, please go ahead, Friedrich.
Yeah, no, Friedrich from OpenSanctions.
We think this is going to last for around 30 minutes. Our plan is the following. We will give a short introduction of ourselves in addition to the thing we already did. And then we are going to talk about open sanctions and the data they are doing to catalog sanctions data from all over the world. Before moving on to talking about Convier and how Convier can use open sanctions to screen documents that you may have in your document repository. If you're watching this on YouTube, you may notice that you can ask questions in the comments. Unless there are questions like your comments like "we can't hear you," we will try to do them at the end. I think it's going to be plenty of time for questions. And with that, I will hand it over to Friedrich. Go ahead.
Okay, hi everybody. Pleasure to be here, and thanks so much for setting this up, Peter. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we do at OpenSanctions, which in a phrase is we're building blocks for fighting financial crime. And since many of us have had a childhood, it's probably obvious what building blocks are, but I think it's always worth to kind of recall a little bit what we mean when we talk about financial crime. Because once you start getting into the realm where sanctions and similar instruments apply, what you're talking about is this very stratified phenomenon of large-scale money laundering, of corruption, of fraud, of procurement mishandling, etc. And these are phenomena that are large enough that they really affect the fate of nations, right? You can see in this picture here the modest dacha that some friends of Mr. Putin's have bought for him. This has opportunity cost, right? So if you think about a villa like this means there's so and so many schools and hospitals and roads that aren't going to be built or supplied or maintained properly in Russia or in other countries. And obviously this also has democratic costs, right? So you have a loss of trust in democratic institutions, and eventually you end up in really precarious and horrible scenarios like the ones that we see playing out in Russia right now. And what can we do to address that? Well, we take the most modest building block first, which is that OpenSanctions aggregates global watch list data. So we bring together about 120 or so data sources at the moment, from official sanctions lists released by governments to databases and lists of politically exposed people, politicians and their close family members, criminal watch lists, debarment databases for companies that have been excluded from government procurement. And a thing that we really specialize in and that we're really excited about is also a lot of journalist research and data that then explains the broader context and the associates and the middlemen that are involved in those money laundering and financial crime systems to keep them running. And with OpenSanctions, we are a very odd organization, we produce open data. So you can go to our website right now and you can browse the entire data set that we've produced. You can even download the whole data set that we have produced as a whole data set, play with it. You can, for example, use our API, or you can even install our API software on your own premises and run a screening process via that API. And we're also ready for commercial use, which means that once you've decided that this data can be of use to your in-house or to your business use cases, then you can get a subscription and you can basically become reliant on it, knowing that it's going to be there tomorrow and the day after, so that it's just like any other supplier of data that you use in order to conduct your business. What our philosophy with this is, and this is where the building blocks come back in, is that we do one thing and we do it really well. So we try to really focus on creating a rich and very clean data set. We create these integrated profiles that bring together all the different information about individuals and companies from all the sanctions lists and public data sources that we're able to tap and enrich our data with. We build a knowledge graph that has connectivity between the different actors, company ownership, directorship, family links, business associates, all that kind of information in detail. And we turn all of that data into a standardized format, which makes it really easy to adopt and to then reuse, and it's really well specified. And the best thing about it, it's fully transparent. So instead of saying, hey, this data needs to be a proprietary asset, you can see anything from our source code that produces the data to the data on our website, to the full provenance even of which particular fact that we're displaying on our birth date, which representing on our website, which birth date comes from which source at which time, how trustworthy is this? Is this coming from a government, or is it coming from a company's registry that might be maintained, or is it coming from a society source? And so the idea there is that you have a fully trusted data set that you can work with, rather than kind of mystery meat where it's just, okay, this is our proprietary data, go deal with it. So given this building block, what can we build with this? Well, the most obvious thing that a lot of the people we work with are doing is screening and AML analysis. So we have about 80 or so customers that use our data to perform sanctions screening, to perform anti-money laundering analyses and graph building for their in-house knowledge graphs. But we're excited that this is also a tool that can be used beyond that. So, for example, in its recent investigation, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists was looking into company ownership and business links inside of Cyprus, and they also cited our data as a key source for conducting their investigation, finding persons and entities of interest, and then investigating them further. So we like to see our data used not just within the kind of narrow compliance space, but more broadly as a building block for all kinds of analyses into the phenomena of money laundering, organized crime, grant corruption, etc. And that's a very brief overview. What's I think also important as a final notion to emphasize is that we're not doing this alone. So Open Sanctions provides these kind of key data bricks of sanctions data, politicians data, and some crime data. But we work and link up to a lot of other data sources, whether it's open ownership, who have a lot of beneficial ownership data about companies, open corporates that also consolidate and clean up company information, Glide, the organization that issues LEI codes, or other organizations like the Perm ID that Reuters issues. We try to make Open Sanctions so that it becomes part of a tapestry rather than the one be-all, end-all data pool that tries to contain everything. So really the idea is that you have a lot of small data pieces that you can remix to really ideally meet your business needs or your investigative needs. Pulling that all together, these are our building blocks. We provide sanctions and risk data. We also really try to put this together in terms of a good record linkage and clean data, and we provide a rich graph that you can then use to explore and dive deep into the connectivities and the relationships that lie behind these individual sanctions inclusions or their associates and subsidiaries. So with that, I would hand back to Petter.
Thank you, Friedrich. I have worked quite a bit with OpenSanctions data, and I can tell that they do a fantastic job of cataloging this data and making them easily accessible and easy to use. Sanctions data can be quite messy, so I certainly appreciate that effort that you are doing. All right, let's talk about Convier. Convier is an application that connects data. It's like a switchboard between spreadsheets, databases, documents, your Google Drive, OneDrive, applications with APIs, and also graph databases. A great example of connecting this data is by connecting documents to OpenSanctions data. The key thing that we're doing here is that we're not storing any data. We're not pulling it all together and trying to store it all. We just go out and load the data on the fly, letting these data sources work together to create a complete picture. If we enter an agreement and you want to use Convier, Convier will be installed inside of your cloud environment, meaning that you will have full control over where data resides. No data will flow outside of your network unless you explicitly ask it to. I'm not going to talk that much about how we configure the system, but I will say that we have made massive efforts to make it extremely easy to both add data and also connect this data together. But enough of a screenshot. Let's dive into a real demo. Let's see here. What we're looking at here is the installation of Convier. Inside of this installation, there's a project that I have called OpenSanctions Sanction Securities, which is the data set that I'm using. I have added 3 different data sources. I have my document store, which we will spend some time looking at. I've added the sanction entity, sanction securities data set from OpenSanctions as a spreadsheet directly from my Google Drive. It could also be OneDrive or other sources. And for completeness, I've also added a offshore leaks. I'll come back to a little bit later with what this looks like. But from here, I can both browse data like I just did. I can also search for data. I can browse, like view it. But what we are talking about today is the screening of documents, specifically of PDF documents. For this, I will move to my Google Drive, where I have a couple of PDF documents. Also, here is the actual the spreadsheet that I also loaded directly from Google Drive into the project. So if I have a PDF, this is real data, all of it. Besides that, I'm not making any opinions what any match or no match may mean. But this is meant to be sort of representative of a real document that you may want to screen against a sanctions list. To open this in Convier, I right-click on it, and because I have added Convier to my Google account, this, again, similar with the OneDrive or SharePoint, I get this button where I can click to open it Convier. I can also do that with multiple files at once. But just to keep things simple, I will start with this one PDF document that we looked at. Opening this in Convier, I first have to choose which project I want to open it in, which is this one project that I have. And now it will pull up this PDF. And before moving further, it's probably makes sense to stop a little bit and talk about what we're looking at here, both how we got here, what we're currently seeing, and where we could go from here as part of a sanction investigation. So first of all, this is a document. I have the title loaded from the Google Drive. I have the PDF readily available that I can look at. I have a couple of matches. What's happened here is that Convier has pulled out the text from the PDF that I opened, and then it has searched using all of that text against the data coming from OpenSanctions. Now, this is a very, very different method than other approaches to this kind of screening. Normally, you would have to do some sort of entity extraction first, rely on some statistical model to identify pieces of the text that represents a name of something. And then you would check if that name matches the sanctions list. We have no such step in between. We search for everything. which means that we are independent of context. We're also independent of language and to some extent alphabet. This is particularly important for semi-structured data, which we will look at soon, which typically tables within a PDF document, which is very, very hard for an entity extraction algorithm to detect. So you end up missing things. But by searching, you find everything. From here, I can navigate to these matches. This pulls up a similar view for the sanctioned entity. This is data coming from OpenSanctions itself. All kinds of aliases that Friedrich already mentioned, coming from various sanctions lists all over the world. So even if you may not be interested in OFAC sanctions lists, you may still be interested in how OFAC mentions this entity. So these aliases coming from all over the place may still be interesting to you, even if the sanctions list itself may not be relevant. You also have a direct link back to the original data, so it's very, very easy to trust the data that you're looking at. But it may be interesting to see where in a document you have a match. Like in these particular cases, it looks very unlikely that these will be false positives. But in other cases, it may be interesting to see exactly where it finds it. One thing is to look at the actual text, but more interesting is to see it in the actual context in the PDF you're looking at. So what I did here is that I opened the PDF, and then I clicked on one of the matches to scroll down exactly to where I found it. Similar with, you can scroll to the other match as well. This makes it very, very easy to review the match that I found and also understand which context it's in. For large PDFs, this is absolutely critical to have this kind of capability. The last thing to consider in this particular view is this thing we call risk indicators. Risk indicators are rules about data that helps you remember what may be significant. There are many, many examples of this and many, many use cases. But in this particular case, it's about, hey, there's actually something in this list. Like most documents won't have any matches, and this thing will be grayed out, and you won't need to think about it. So that's one thing that you can say, oh, you may want to look at this. But another important thing with this risk indicator is that it enables us to screen through all documents to find any document that has a match. So if you have a corpus of 1,000 PDF documents, you don't want to go through each and every one of them just to see that there's no results. But by pulling up this, I see that half of my documents that I've added, some of these documents have been added multiple times. I can quickly identify which ones these are. So, and then from here, I can continue working as I did before. Looking at another example, there may be interesting to go a little bit further than just a sanctions list. You may have access to a ownership registry, as Friedrich was mentioning, like connections to other companies that may have connections to your customers. And with this, you may want to continue the exploration just beyond this first step of analysis. And this is where offshore leaks comes in. In this project, I don't have an ownership registry, but what I have is the Neo4j database that ICIJ makes available. So going back to my Google Drive, I can open another PDF that looks similar. Again, real data. I make no opinions about what a match may mean. It's an old document. It's from 2017, but still. So the same process here. Open it, select which projects I want to add it to, and it will now pull up a couple different matches. And this is the similar thing. I can repeat the process that I did before, scroll to the match of question that was found, but I can also move to a different view, which is the graph. The graph is, I'm looking at this exact same document, but now everything has been stripped away except for the title and the type of this document. And I can do the same kind of screening by clicking a few buttons. And instead of having a list of matches, I now have a graph of matches. And so this is particularly useful when I want to step 1 or 2 or 3 layers further out to see how this connects to other data that I have, for example, ownership registry, or some customer data that I have, other internal data I may have. So I can then move to clicking to linking it to offshore leaks, where it will do like a simple name matching to find things that are similar. And after this, I thought a little bit, find this one match. So now this is an example of how we have connected documents to sanctioned entities and sanctions entities to offshore leaks. So this is show how we function as the switchboard by like how we can pairwise combine these data sets. And from here, I have access to the full Neo4j database from the offshore leaks data, where I can continue my investigation. One final thing that I would like to mention, I said I would not talk about configuring the system, but I want to say a little bit about how these matches appear. Because there are some rules, you have to specify some level of risk appetite for what kind of matches you want. And there are three different things we can play on here and configure. One is the amount of match that has to be configured to be found. In this particular case, I've set that to be 90%. So a match in this PDF has to find 90% of the name in offshore leaks, in the OpenSanctions, for to be a match. The second thing is if I accept spelling errors, typically min edit distance, where names are written slightly differently, if you want that to be included, or if you want to be exact matches. So that's two. And the last thing is you have a feedback option. Within sanctioned data, there's a lot of international limited business. And then there's like this tiny little piece at the end that identifies which company it is. So you want a way to be able to get rid of all those common words and only require the whole thing. The last thing as well, even though it's a 90% match, it has to be more. It has to be a complete match, because three of the other words are so either so common, or it has been rejected so many times that it has to be, they are ignored. Hopefully this has been a useful introduction to Convier. And I think with that, we can see if there are any questions. I'm bringing you up now, Friedrich. Just a warning. There we are. There we are.
That's such a cool demo.
Thanks.
I really like looking at this and kind of thinking about all the different types of document sets that you would want to do this analysis on, whether it's like for trade finance, or I come from the world of journalism on a bunch of articles. Have you thought a lot about what different types of documents you'd want to throw in there?
As you mentioned, trade finance, which is one thing, like large contracts, large documents, typically of poor data quality. It's like they have been scanned and printed a couple of times, maybe some coffee stains, maybe some stamps here and there, where the ability to do approximate matching is very, very important. But I think in general, like anywhere you have a large corpus of documents and also a list of known things you're looking for is a use case, because we're not finding every name. Like if you screen a news article for sanctions, you're not going to find the name of the reporter unless you're looking for it. So you're only going to find these things that you're actually looking for.
And I think we have the first question that goes to you.
Let's see here.
Question is, you connected to OpenSanctions as a spreadsheet. Can you also connect as an API?
Yes, we can. It requires an extra step, but yes, you can certainly also just include it directly.
That's very cool.
I had a question for you, actually, if there are nothing else pending. As I mentioned in the beginning, I had worked quite a bit with OpenSanctions data, loving it. Obviously, for me, I don't screen my customers. Like that's a very limited use case of screen that against sanctions list. But I do a lot of what I feel like R&D. And I can imagine that being also the case for other enterprises that either has evolving data assets, like they get more data from customers, and they also have new business areas. And I can imagine that there's a part of like the appeal with Open Sanctions is that you can actually use this data to actually figure out, okay, so how are we actually going to work with this new data? How are we going to screen it? So I'm wondering, like, how do you see like a difference between people starting out with R&D and then moving to actually like, okay, let's turn it on, let's screen this like every single hour or similar? Like, how is that process?
Yeah, I think like we're trying to be really, really easy to experiment with, right? Right now, any data scientist can just go and connect to our website, download the entire data set, run some experiment with it, figure out, okay, if I just take the most naive way of matching that up with our supplier database, does it look like I might be having a problem, right? But like obviously most of the real processes that people want to design around this eventually are compliance processes where you're continuously being warned about what risk you might be exposed to. And so that's sort of what we're trying to do as an organism, right? We're trying to go from saying, okay, you experiment, you use it as open data, to now you're going to go into production. And as you do that, you want the reliability of having a contract. You want to be able to say, this is our sanctions data provider, and they're reliable supplier. And then we basically offer a subscription service that people can sign up for and really use this like they would. I don't want to name the names, but like any of the big commercial databases. But yeah, always kind of with full transparency, knowing exactly what you get and being able to play with the data from day one.
Fantastic. Really, really cool.
It's also fun because often we get like really good ideas from people who are like, hey, I'm a data scientist inside this and this organization, and I've just had a little look at your data. And if you added this list, that would kind of put things together for us in a way that we can actually make these connectivities. And I think that's something that we're really trying to be, is to kind of be this nexus data set that connects outwards to all the other data sets that you might want to combine.
It's really cool to hang out in your Slack channel to see the people coming in and asking questions. That's really, really interesting to see.
It's fun. All right, let's see. Do we have any more questions coming from YouTube?
Doesn't seem like it.
We have a stunned audience.
But if there's no way of hanging around here. I want to thank you, Friedrich, for joining this webinar. I have found this a very nice experience. So thank you for showing up and be part of this.
Thank you for the very cool demo. It's really fun to watch.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone.